Subscribe because it's free.
The distress signal echoed across the void, reaching every known civilization. A desperate plea for salvation, spoken in every language, carried a single, urgent message. Help us or we die. The Zorvani, once rulers of a proud and thriving empire, were on the brink of annihilation. Their homeworlds lay in ruin, their fleets scattered, and their colonies left to burn. The enemy? The Vorthan Swarm, a relentless, consuming force that devoured entire star systems without mercy. The galaxy had already passed judgment. The Zorvani were finished. No species would risk their own survival for a dying empire. One by one, their allies turned away, offering condolences instead of aid. It was the way of things. Civilizations rose and fell. This time, it was the Zorvani's turn to be erased. But desperation breeds boldness. With no other options, the Zorvani turned to the one species they had never considered. A young and proven race, humans, a species largely dismissed by the greater galactic powers. Reckless, primitive, unpredictable. But in this moment, none of that mattered. If even a fraction of the rumors about them were true, then maybe, just maybe, they would listen. The message was sent, and against all expectation, the reply came almost instantly. Not hesitation, not negotiation, just 3 simple words. Send the coordinates. The Zorvani were stunned. Other species had debated for months before refusing them outright, but the humans, they responded in hours. Why? Did they not understand the scale of the threat? Did they not fear the swarm? Or was this sheer arrogance? There was only one way to find out. A delegation was sent to meet the humans in person, hoping to explain the situation in a way that would make them understand the hopelessness of it all. They arrived at a military installation on Mars, expecting a grand council, endless debates, and bureaucratic delays. Instead, they were met by a single human officer. No ceremony, no fanfare, just a man with sharp eyes and a quiet confidence that unnerved them. He sat across from them, arms crossed, listening as the Zorvani detailed their plight. The numbers, the casualties, the swarm's unstoppable advance, the devastation of their once mighty fleets. They spared no details, hoping to convey the full weight of their despair. The human listened without a word. When they finished, they expected questions, doubt, at least some hesitation. Instead, the man leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. His gaze was steady, calculating. Then he spoke. Show us the battlefield. No deliberation, no discussion, just an order, as if the decision had already been made before they even arrived. The Zorvani were left speechless. This wasn't how diplomacy worked. No negotiations, no treaties, just immediate, decisive action. It was unsettling. Still, they complied, transmitting all the data they had on the Vorthan. The human took it, glanced at it briefly, and nodded. We'll handle it. Just like that, as if this was just another routine engagement. The Zorvani left that meeting with more questions than answers. They had come expecting a plea for resources, maybe some reluctant offers of small-scale support. Instead, they had found something else entirely. Not arrogance, not desperation. Confidence. And for the first time in a long time, they felt something strange. A feeling they barely recognized anymore. Hope. The Zorvani expected delays, strategy meetings that would last for weeks, and cautious planning like every other species they had encountered. Instead, within hours of receiving the data, the humans called for a war council. The Zorvani delegation was brought to a secure command center where high-ranking human military officers and strategists were already at work. The room was filled with screens displaying battle simulations, fleet compositions, and enemy weaknesses. There was no panic, no despair, only professionals who had already begun dismantling the problem in front of them. The Zorvani couldn't understand it. They had fought the swarm for decades, watching world after world fall. How could these humans look at the same data and remain so calm? One of the Zorvani, a high-ranking military officer, finally spoke. You have seen the numbers. The swarm is endless. No species has survived direct conflict with them. A human general chuckled. Then we won't fight them directly. That response made no sense. War was fought with overwhelming force, with fleets clashing head-on until one side was destroyed. The swarm always won, because they had the numbers. No one had ever outmatched them. The humans saw war differently. They didn't see an unbeatable force. They saw weaknesses, flaws, vulnerabilities hidden within the chaos. One strategist gestured to a screen displaying supply routes and logistics data. The swarm relies on rapid expansion, consuming everything in its path. But even they need supply lines. We cut those, they starve. Another officer pulled up a schematic of swarm warships. They use organic-based technology, highly adaptive but predictable. If we disrupt their biosignals, their ships won't function properly. A scientist leaned forward. They're used to enemies who fight conventionally. We don't. We wage wars in ways they can't predict. The Zervani still didn't understand. So what is your strategy? A diversion? A defensive retreat? The human general smiled. No, we're going to dismantle them from the inside. Sabotage, cyber warfare, precision strikes. We don't fight wars of attrition. We fight wars of annihilation. That word sent a chill through the Zervani. Annihilation. They had expected a plan for survival. Instead, the humans were preparing a plan for extermination. The next few hours were unlike anything the Zervani had ever witnessed. The humans didn't waste time. They didn't argue over morality or political consequences. They simply started planning how to win. Every possible angle was analyzed. Every weakness in the swarm structure exploited. Instead of launching a traditional counterattack, humanity focused on psychological warfare. The swarm was a force of nature, never before slowed or stopped. But what happened when they faced an enemy that didn't fight the way they expected? One plan involved precision sabotage. Elite human strike teams would infiltrate key enemy strongholds, taking out high-value targets with pinpoint efficiency. Another strategy involved cyber warfare, hijacking the swarm's own communication networks to spread false intelligence, leading entire fleets into ambushes or turning them against each other. Then came the real shock, the ultimate contingency plan. If all else failed, humanity had a weapon unlike anything the Zervani had ever seen before. Something that would force the swarm into complete surrender. A weapon that shouldn't exist. The Zervani leader hesitated before asking the question. And if they refused to retreat? The human commander's expression darkened. Then we erased them. The room fell silent. The Zervani had come seeking allies, hoping for a force strong enough to hold the line. Instead, they had found something else. A species that did not fear the swarm. A species that was not afraid to end them forever. The Vorthan swarm never lost wars. Entire empires had fallen before them. Their worlds turned to wastelands. Their people devoured or enslaved. To the swarm, this war was no different. The Zervani were merely another species on the list of civilizations doomed to extinction. But something changed. Supply stations went dark. Fleet movements were disrupted. Communications between command ships failed without warning. The swarm, known for its perfect coordination, suddenly found itself stumbling. At first, they assumed it was a minor setback, a navigational error, a technical malfunction. Then their ships started exploding, not in battle, not from external fire. They simply detonated, one by one, as if something inside them had gone terribly wrong. The first instinct of the Vorthan leadership was to blame sabotage. But how? Their security was impenetrable. Their technology was beyond anything the lesser races could understand. No one had ever infiltrated a Vorthan warship before. And yet, humans had. Elite strike teams had boarded key vessels undetected, planning devices that ruptured critical systems from the inside. Entire command ships lost control, their navigation overridden, their weapons turned against their own fleets. The swarm panicked. Their entire strategy relied on overwhelming force, on fear, on an enemy that ran before they even arrived. But humanity wasn't running. Humanity wasn't afraid. They were hunting. The first major battle took place at the edge of a dying star system. The swarm's fleet, numbering in the millions, moved in as expected. What they didn't expect was a complete and utter chaos that awaited them. As soon as they entered the system, their warships began failing. Life support flickered on and off. Artificial gravity failed at random intervals. Targeting systems locked onto their own ships instead of the enemy. The humans had hijacked their own network. Vorthan vessels turned against each other, firing blindly as their own systems betrayed them. Meanwhile, human strike teams executed precise attacks on key ships, cutting the swarm's leadership apart piece by piece. And then came the human fleet. It wasn't the largest. It wasn't the most advanced. But it was unlike anything the swarm had ever faced. The humans didn't fight like the others. They didn't engage in drawn-out battles. They struck where it hurt the most, crippling the enemy before they even knew what was happening. Within hours, what should have been an easy victory for the swarm turned into an absolute slaughter. Their formations crumbled. Their fleet was left in disarray. And for the first time in history, the Vorthan ran. But humanity wasn't done. A single human warship emerged from hyperspace at the heart of the swarm's primary command center. It wasn't a battleship. It wasn't a dreadnought. It was something far more terrifying. It carried a weapon that should not exist. A singularity bomb. A device capable of collapsing an entire system into nothingness. The swarm had conquered countless civilizations, obliterated entire fleets, wiped out entire species. But they had never faced an enemy willing to destroy not just them, but everything if necessary. A transmission was sent to the Vorthan leadership. Leave now, surrender, or we erase you from existence. For the first time, the swarm hesitated. They had never known fear before. They had never needed to. Now, facing an enemy that had no limits, no hesitation, and no mercy, they understood what it meant to be hunted, and they ran. The swarm's retreat was absolute. For the first time in their history, they had encountered an enemy that refused to break, refused to kneel, and fought with a level of brutality that surpassed even their own. But humanity was not finished. The surviving Vorthan forces fled across the stars, seeking refuge in their most fortified systems. They believed they could regroup, rebuild, and return stronger. That was how war worked. They had done it countless times before. But humanity had made a decision. This war would not be fought again. As the remnants of the swarm scrambled to form a defensive line, the full force of humanity descended upon them. No mercy, no hesitation. Humanity had no intention of letting them escape to fight another day. The war had to end here. Coordinated strikes targeted their breeding worlds first, planets teeming with millions of Vorthan spawn, the foundation of their endless numbers. The bombardments were relentless. Orbital strikes rained down, igniting the atmosphere, turning entire landscapes to molten ruin. The swarm's last stronghold was a massive Dyson sphere, a structure built to harvest the energy of an entire star, their ultimate fortress. No species had ever breached its defenses, but the humans didn't need to breach it. They simply killed the star. Advanced stellar collapse weapons, something no other civilization even dared conceive, were deployed. In a single, precise strike, the entire star dimmed, imploded, and consumed itself in a gravitational cascade. The Dyson sphere, along with the billions of Vorthan within, ceased to exist. Across the galaxy, the few surviving Vorthan realized the truth. Humanity did not wage wars to win. They waged wars to end them. For the first time, the swarm did something they had never done before. They surrendered. A transmission was sent to every remaining Vorthan force. Not a demand, not a treaty, just a warning. You will never rise again. If you do, we will return. And next time, we won't leave anything behind. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The war was over. The Zorvani, once a dying race, now stood in awe. They had expected salvation, a desperate last stand, maybe a chance to fight another day. Instead, they had witnessed a species that rewrote the rules of war itself. The humans didn't just defeat the swarm. They erased the very idea of their existence. And in that moment, every civilization in the galaxy understood the terrifying truth. Humanity was not to be underestimated, ever.